morning, guys. I have the honor to introduce our speaker today. He's been lead pastor at the Well in Kingsburg for the past 2 months, and I'd just like to give you a warm welcome to PJ Lewis.
Thanks, Patrick. As Patrick said, I'm at the Well Kingsburg for the last couple months. I've been part of the Well in Fresno for the last 5 years, but I speak at Hume Lake every once in a while too, so that's really fun to do. Any of you guys ever go to Hume Lake for the camps in the summer or something like that? It's a great time, and it's fun to do that too. So if you guys got your Bibles, go ahead and open it up to Matthew chapter 13. We're going to be looking at that, Matthew 13. And when I was asked to do chapel here, I don't know. I think speakers have a tough time because, well, first of all, you're not somebody that I normally would talk with or talk to, and you wouldn't normally talk to me. So it's hard to, I don't know you. It's really easy when I get to know people over a while. Then I go, okay, I know where they're at, know where they want to go. I know maybe what, I get a sense of what I need to hear, what maybe we all need to hear. But I don't know you, so it's really hard to choose something. So I thought to myself, over the last couple of months, I've been thinking, what do I do? What do I talk about? And I thought, I'm just going to share with you something that God hit me with over this last few weeks myself. As I was teaching in Kingsburg, we've been going over parables. And if you look at Matthew 13, that's just a chapter of all parables. A parable, it's got the symbolic meaning kind of thing. When I think of a parable, I just put 3 letters in front of it, C-O-M, comparable, to remind me, okay, this is supposed to be comparing something to something else. And so I thought, when I looked at this parable, guys, for a long time, I thought, especially in high school, through a lot of my life, honestly, I have these certain questions that I have for God that I want to, when I get to Him, I want to go, could you really explain this to me? Because I really don't really get this. And one of them is that famous question that maybe believers and unbelievers have this question. If God is so good, do you even know what I'm going to say now? Some of you might know. If God is so good, then why does He allow evil to continue going on? Have any of you guys ever had that question? You ever had that? If you don't, maybe you will someday. Maybe you're going to have that question now. You're like, oh, thanks a lot, PJ. You're just making me think about that now. But for somebody else that you come across, people are going to have that question. An unbeliever is going to have that question. Hey, if God is so good, then why does He allow all this evil to keep on happening? Which is a great question. I had people answer that question. Hey, this is what I think, and maybe just kind of give me an idea. And then I came across this parable. I never knew that Jesus actually answered that question in a parable. I never knew that until I really looked at this parable here. Let's look at it together. It's in Matthew chapter 13, verse 24. And it says this. Let me just read it first, and then we'll just kind of get the idea of the actual symbolic stuff in a little bit. But he says, and He put another parable before them, saying, the kingdom of heaven may be compared to a man who sowed good seed in his field, but while his men were sleeping, his enemy came and sowed weeds among the wheat and went away. So when the plants came up and bore grain, then the weeds appeared also. And the servants of the master of the house came and said to him, Master, did you not sow good seed in your field? How then does it have weeds? And he said to them, an enemy has done this. So the servants said to him, then do you want us to go and gather them? In other words, you want us to go and pull weeds? He said to him, no, lest in gathering the weeds you root up the wheat along with them. Let both grow together until the harvest, and at harvest time I will tell the reapers, gather the weeds first, bind them in bundles to be burned, but gather the wheat into my barn. So now you got the idea, right? Here's a guy, plants stuff, plants this wheat. This enemy in the middle of the night comes and plants all these weeds, and then it grows up. The servants say, hey, there's weeds with the, do you want us to go pull these weeds because all these weeds are here? And who put them here? And the guy says, well, my enemy did this, but don't pull them, because if you pull the weeds, maybe you're going to pull some wheat too, and let's just wait for the harvest when everything's just all ready to go. So it doesn't even matter if you do pull some wheat because it's already mature, and so then we'll gather those weeds then, we'll throw them away, burn them up, we'll gather the wheat and put them in the barn. Guys got the story? There's the idea. Now we're going, what does that mean? What is that even talking about? What I love is that there's not every parable that Jesus explains, but He explains some of them. This is one of them that He explains. Go down to verse 36. And then we're going to come back to that parable again. He says, then He left the crowds and went to His house, and the disciples came and said, this is verse 36, explain to us the parable of the weeds in the field. He answered, the one who sows the good seed is the Son of Man, and the field is the world, and the good seed is the sons of the kingdom. You guys getting it so far? Fills the world. Okay, Son of Man, Jesus. That's Jesus. He planted people that want to follow him. The people that he's planted. If you're a follower of Jesus, you're the sons of the kingdom. You're a believer. You've decided to, by faith, hand your life over to Jesus Christ. That's you. Not everybody has done that. But if you're the people, I'm just talking to the people in this room that have said, yeah, I'm a follower of Jesus. That's you. He says the weeds are the sons of the evil one. And the enemy who sowed them is the devil. Here's these weeds that are these other people that haven't decided to follow Jesus Christ. They've rejected Jesus, which is really interesting, you guys, because just as a side note, do you notice there's not a third plant? There's either a follower of Jesus, a son of the kingdom, or there's the son of the evil one. Which is weird because I look at people all the time and I go, well, that person's not really that bad. They're not a Christian, but they're not that bad. But you guys, that's not how God looks at it. And it's very deceptive because it doesn't mean that if you're not a follower of Jesus that you're like sacrificing dogs on Halloween to Satan or something like that. It doesn't mean that. Like you're a Satan worshiper. But you guys, it also doesn't mean that you're okay. Because Satan and sin is very deceptive. Every single one of us is owned by somebody. I know that's hard for some of us. We love independence. We want to be free. But deep down, and I think at some point in your life, you're going to find out none of us are. It's just not how we're wired. We're wired to be dependent. And if we're not freely deciding to be dependent upon God, we're going to be dependent upon sin and Satan. And it's very deceptive because sin and Satan makes you believe that you're independent. It's great at doing it. Sin makes people think you're making the decision, when in reality it's taking you down a road that leads to destruction. I mean, that's what it does. But there's people that are either the sons of the kingdom or the sons of the evil one. So those are the people that the devil planted, and it says that the harvest is the end of the age. Keep going in verse 39. And the reapers are the angels. And then he says, here's the parable. Just as the weeds are gathered and burned with fire, so it will be at the end of the age. The Son of Man will send his angels. They will gather out of his kingdom all causes. Look what he says what the weeds are. Not just people, but also causes of evil. He says they will gather out of the kingdom all causes of sin. In other words, all the stumbling blocks, all the things that are offensive, all this stuff that we're going, this is so evil, this is wrong, this is bad in the world. Why doesn't God do something about it? He says he will at the end of the age. And it says, and all the lawbreakers, also these people who have never decided to hand their life over to Jesus Christ. And it says, and throw them into the fiery furnace. In that place there will be weeping and gnashing of teeth. Then the righteous will shine like the sun in the kingdom of the Father. He who has ears, let him hear. If you follow Jesus Christ, you're going to be like the wheat. If you're not, you're the weed. I'm going to talk to all of us as though we're wheat. Okay? Because probably most of us are. We're followers of Jesus Christ. And we have that question, God, if you're so good, why don't you do something about this evil thing going on in my life, this evil thing going on in the world, this evil person that's in my life? Because we have that question. Why doesn't God do something about that? Because it's so bad. And it's hurting people. Why doesn't God do something about that person in my family, at where I work, in my school, in my neighborhood? Why doesn't God do something with them? I would really like it if God, honestly, if you're thinking about it like a weed, I wish he would just pull that weed. Right? Because it would be a lot better for me. Just like it is better for plants if you pull the weeds. Now let's go back to that parable again. We're going to pick it up here. Remember, after he plants the good seed, and then Satan himself is the one who puts the evil in. And if you remember, you go back to Genesis chapter 3, and Satan is the one who introduced sin to Adam and Eve. He's the one that introduced it. It's also their responsibility they accepted it, but he introduced it. And so why doesn't God just do something about it? Look what it says. It says in verse 27, and the servants of the master of the house came to him and said, Master, did you not sow good seed in your field? How then does it have weeds? And he explains it. Why is there evil? He said to them, an enemy has done this. We already know who the enemy is. But he still allowed it, right? Why? Look what it even says. So the servant said to him, they said what we would say, you guys. It's great. I love this because they're asking the question I would ask. Then do you want us to go out and gather them? Do you want us to go out and pull the weeds? The angels are going, hey, God, do you want us to go out there and just get rid of all this evil and all these evil people? And I would think that a good farmer would say what? Yes. I mean, what farmer would say, no, let's just leave the weeds? That's cool. It doesn't matter. And I would even think that if he does leave the weeds, he doesn't really care about the wheat. And some of you think the same thing. He's not doing something with this thing that's really hard, that's evil, that's hurtful. Maybe he doesn't care about me that much. But look at what he says. It's exactly the opposite. He says, this is crazy, you guys. Look at verse 29. But he said, no. Don't get rid of the evil that Satan put there. No, don't pull those evil people who are not followers of Jesus Christ and who are evil people. Don't pull them. Why? Look what it says. Lest in gathering the weeds, you root up what? The wheat. Isn't that crazy? He says, man, because I do care about the wheat, because I do care about my sons, because I do care about the people, leave the evil people right there with them. And I'd be going, what are you talking about? But he says, because if you go out there and pull those weeds right now before everything is mature, two things can happen. Either while you're pulling that weed, because it's so close to that piece of wheat, if you pull that weed, what can happen accidentally? Hey, you can pull out this wheat. I'm talking about the parable. It's not going to be an accident, but he says you're going to pull out this piece of wheat too, because they're so connected there. There's something about it that, you know what, if you pull out that weed, it'll actually do damage to the wheat. So, and if you pull out the wheat too early before it's mature, is it good anymore? And can it grow anymore? It can't. It can't mature. It can't get to the place of getting maturity where it needs to be in order for the harvest. He says, don't pull the weed. The second thing that can happen is this. You can see this weed, and if the wheat is too immature and it doesn't have that head of wheat on it, what can you accidentally pull because you think it's a weed? A piece of wheat. We could be pulling something when we go, oh, that's got to be a weed. I don't see any wheat on it. And you pull it, and then later on you find out, oh my goodness, if I just would have let it grow a little bit more, we would have seen that it wasn't actually a weed at all. It was actually a piece of wheat. So he says, don't pull them. And he says, wait until the harvest. Wait until the very end, at the very end, when it's all mature, at the very end of the age, when we know every single thing that's a wheat will be mature. And if we pull it accidentally, it doesn't matter, because it's already mature. So let's wait. Do you see what this is crazy, guys. I was going, God, what are you saying here for my life? Because there's situations I go, God, why don't you take care of this evil person that's maybe in the world, in my life, whatever. I go, man, and why don't you take care of this evil thing, this thing that causes people to sin? Why don't you just get it out of the way? And God says, no, because it's there. Get this. This killed me. Actually, PJ, it's there because I'm going to keep it there so that you will mature. If I pull it, it might thwart you becoming mature. It's crazy. It might stop you from becoming where you need to be and growing in the growth that I have planned for you. If I pull that evil weed right next to you, it might actually affect you maturing. And I don't want to do that because I care so much about you. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to leave that weed right there. And I want you to trust me. I love verse 30. He says, let them grow together until harvest. Until you finally matured enough that we can now pull that weed. Leave it till harvest. Let them grow together. You guys, it hit me. Why does God not do something about these evil people and these evil things and these, even though Satan's the one who put them there, God is so powerful and so incredible that he's able to say, I'm going to use that for your growth. You guys have heard the verse, Romans 8:28 and 29, right? That, hey, God causes all things. What? Remember that? To do what? Causes all things for the good, for all of those who love Jesus, who love God. He causes everything in your life, good, bad, whatever. He causes everything in order to do what's good. What we forget about is what the next verse says. In verse 29, he says what the good is, because we go, but this isn't good. You don't know what the good is then. This is what the good is. He says in verse 29, because who he foreknew, he also predestined that we would be conformed to the image of Jesus Christ, his Son. Every single thing in my life and every single thing in your life and every person in my life, good, bad, whatever, every good, bad situation, whatever it is happening that God is going to cause to make me become more like Jesus and to make you become more like Jesus. Isn't that incredible? How in the world are you ever going to be able to love an enemy like Jesus loves his enemy unless you have an enemy? Have you thought about that? If you never have an enemy, you'll never learn how to love an enemy. So God loves you so much that he gives you what? An enemy. So that you can become more like Jesus. So you can mature. And he leaves a weed right next to you. That's really hard and it irritates you, doesn't it? And it's even hurtful and it even sucks the life out of you. But God leaves it there because somehow, some way, it's going to make you what you need to be as long as you keep on trusting him. Guys, the only thing between the temptation and a test that makes you better, and a temptation that takes you away from God, is what we do with it. That's the only difference. If we trust him through it, it's a test that makes us better. If we decide to go, I'm not going to trust him, I'll trust myself, I'm just going to go my own way, it becomes a temptation that takes us into sin. But it's all meant to give us a chance to trust him and learn how to trust him more. That's why God doesn't take away stuff, because he is good. If God is so good, why does he not take away all the evil and evil people? Because he is so good. Isn't that a crazy answer? But it's the truth. So what do we do? Also, there's another reason why that weed is there next to you. Do you know there's a reason why that weed is there next to you? It's because you can influence it. You can influence the world around you. You can make a change in that evil thing that's happening in the world around you. You can make a change. And God's not going to take it away because he's going to put you right in there with it so you can make that change. And that person you can have an influence on. The next two parables says that the kingdom of God is like a little mustard seed that grows, and when it grows, it becomes like a tree in the garden that all these birds can now make nests in it. Do you know what it's saying? You are that mustard seed. You're that little thing that doesn't seem like it can make a difference, but as you keep on growing, you actually influence everything else around you. And the next parable says you're like yeast. You're like a fungus. You're like this thing that is able to influence and spread to other people and other things around you. So sometimes we ask the question, God, why are you having this weed so close to me? Why are you having this evil thing, this hard thing in my life right next to me? And God says, because I need you next to it. Changes everything. Guys, I'm just going to close with this because it's crazy. The Christian life is crazy. But when I understand this, you know what I started praying? I stopped praying for God to take the stuff out of my life and those people out of my life. Because I realized why God put me with them. Not why God put that with me. Why God put me with them. And it made me start asking God, please allow me to stay in this thing, even though it's hard. And I want to trust you through it. But I want to make a difference in this situation. And I want to make a difference in this person's life. That's why he has that weed next to you. make sense? Whoever that was for today, you can just know it was for me. Because I've been praying a long time for God to take things out of my life and people out of my life that are evil. And it changed me. Let me pray for us. Lord, thank you for just a little bit of time of just looking in your word, even answering that age-old question, why do you put evil in our lives? Why do you allow it? We know it's from the evil one, but God, we also know you can pull them if you want to, but you don't. Not because you don't love us, but because you do. And that's crazy, God. To think that there's things in our lives and people in our lives that are really hard, but are also going to be used to grow us, to mature us. God, we just want to trust you through it. And God, we want to just change the thing that we look at. We don't want to keep on looking at why is this evil person or evil thing or hard thing in my life. But God, we're going to ask the question, why are you putting me in this other person's life? And God, there's a reason for it, we know. I pray that we would all be an influence in the people around us, not allowing them to influence us, but allowing you through us to influence them. And to change the world around us, God, because there's a lot of evil in it that you've placed us next to make a difference. I pray we do that. In your name, amen. Thanks, you guys.
Seniors.